But this is not a Red Bull episode, nor is it an Inter Miami episode, nor is it anything like that. We are talking. Actually, I lied. This kind of ties into Red Bull a little bit. Does one man truly make the difference for a club? Every time Red Bull lose, and it is way too frequent recently. However, every time they lose, there's always that one guy in the comment section saying, buy a big name DP, get somebody in here who we all know and will tear this league apart. Where are the signings? Where's this? Where that? And I just started coaching girls U14, and the one thing that was told to me, which I didn't really, I kind of believe for the level that I'm playing at, if you have one athletic girl, you can kind of take on the league and hold your own without having too many technically skilled players behind her. And that got me thinking about teams like LAFC, LA Galaxy, Atlanta, these teams that were really, really good before they lost a big player or a big player got hurt. And it made me think, does one person really make a difference? Is this a type of league where you can put one person in there? They might not have all the technical ability around them, like a Zlatan, for example, or I use Nacho Piatti and Chris Wondolowski as well as some references here. And do they create is their presence enough to get their team points? Are they truly just taking over the game and ruining it for other teams? And I found some really interesting data where I have 6 players here, and the best record they have when they haven't featured is 500. Everybody else is below 500, and it's very, very shocking. We'll go from the bottom, I think, where Chris Wondolowski I took a look at, and I didn't look super hard because he's played way too many games to get numbers for, and missed a lot of games too, especially at the beginning of his career before he kind of blew up. But if you look at Transfer Market and you look at Chris Wondolowski and they tell you the games that he hasn't played, a lot of those scores are highlighted in red because they lost, or they're highlighted in blue because they tied. Very, very infrequently do you see a green score in there from when they've won without him. And that's just a mention for a player who has made his clear mark on this league and is undoubtedly a legend in MLS. And without his presence, his team doesn't do very well. Granted, they don't do very well anyway, right? So it's not a huge distinguisher, but it gets more distinguishing as we go on. And I spoke about Zlatan, for example. So Zlatan, when Zlatan didn't feature, he missed 12 games. The LA Galaxy won 5 of them, drew 1, and lost the other 6. And that's the second closest to 500. Carlos Vela with LAFC won 8, drew 4, lost 8. And when you look at that, you think, okay, LAFC has Diego Rossi, Brian Rodriguez. At the time when they were there, Amanda Diamande, Bradley Wright Phillips. Like, you can look all across our attacking line, and they don't necessarily need Carlos Vela to be successful, right? Mark Anthony Kay, another name to throw in there, Atuesta, right? Back to front, they were disgusting last year. They're still pretty decent this year. But then it just goes all downhill from here. You look at Nico Ladero for Seattle. 20 games missed since he's joined, not including U.S. Open Cup because they play a bunch of no-name teams there, right? 7 wins, 3 draws, 10 losses. When you don't have a playmaker like Ladero in there, you lost half of the games. He's not there. Nacho Piatti, won 12, drew 12, lost 24. Again, Montreal, not super impressive, but 24 out of 48 games he doesn't feature, you don't pick up points. That's huge in terms of the way that guy can make influence on your game, right? And then the last one I have here is Josef Martinez, the big one that drew this comparison, right? No Josef, no party. 7 wins, 8 draws, 15 losses for Atlanta United. And this kind of comes off the back of Atlanta United also losing Pity Martinez, Miguel Almiron, and Ezekiel Barco not getting up to form, right? But when I look at these numbers, and there's actually one more player I want to pull up that I wasn't thinking about. And I'll give you numbers from this real quick because he only played for one team, so I should be able to find it pretty quickly. Stats by club. NYCFC, do you know who I'm looking at?
I mean, clearly it's Frank Lampard. No,
that guy is.
It's David Villa.
1, 2, 3. All right, we'll count wins. We'll count wins first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses. 1, 2 draws. So he's got a better record than the others. But the majority of this data, and the reason I just look up is because he's another one that could change a game just by getting on the field, right? The reason I look at this is, do teams like New York Red Bull, like Chicago Fire, who have gone and bought a lot of different players, but not really a superstar. Colorado Rapids, having a diffy year. San Jose. Do San Jose need to go out and buy one big name player? The answer is no. San Jose need to go and fix their defensive style. We talked about that last episode. I almost wanted to talk about it again this episode. Side note, I looked up and did a little bit of maths, and FC Cincinnati gave up 75 goals in 34 games, right? Something like that. That is 2.205 goals against average per game. San Jose are on pace for like 2.25 right now. And I know the season's shortened and whatever, but they have given up 13 goals in 2 games. And that's, again, I'm not going to get into it. We talked about it already. Jump back to what we're talking about. Do they need somebody to just say, I'm going to sit at the center mid and I'm going to destroy anybody who comes near me so that I can stop being this, I'm going to follow everybody around type of thing? Maybe. What I didn't look at was defensive players. So I only looked at attacking players here, people who step on and make a change in this game. So do they need to buy a big name striker? Gonzalo Higuain in Miami. Great signing. Is he going to be somebody who can step on and change a game like Zlatan? I don't know. I'm not sure. You shake your head no because you are still hoping Zlatan comes back so you can just talk about him every week.
No, but I've just seen, and I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong. Obviously, as a Miami fan, I want Higuain to do well. I still think of his time watching him at Chelsea when he was just slow to the ball. He didn't really contribute a whole lot going forward. Granted, the pace of the Premier League is, quite a bit quicker than MLS. So, he may come in and slot in perfectly. But anyone who's kind of hoping that he puts up the numbers he does or did when he was, at Madrid, at Juve, when he was in his prime, at Napoli, I don't think he's the same player.
Interesting. Well, that's not our topic of conversation for today, but it's a good point, right? To me, and to answer this big question, I know we've thrown a lot of stats out there. We've thrown a lot of conversation out there. To answer this big question, I'm going to say MLS is not a league where one player makes a difference unless it is the perfect player. And by that, I mean, you look at players like Magnus Eriksson. You look at players like Kaku. You look at players like, hell, you can pull up a list of DPs and just go through them and be like, he sucked. And we did this already. We talked about the biggest bust. So you can spend hella money on tons of players, a la Chicago Fire, and it doesn't come together. And that's okay. It's not okay. But that, to me, doesn't mean that you can just buy anybody from any league and have them walk in and change the game. You need to find the right player, and they need to, one, fit your system. And, like I said, Mario Balotelli coming into MLS, unless he's playing at a team that's ready to just sit in, unless he's playing at Vancouver, that's just going to sit in, kick it up to him, and let him try and hold it up for Ali Adnan to come through. It won't work, right? So to me, and this is me kind of telling my Red Bull supporters, my fellow Red Bull supporters, understand that there is a process going forward, I'm sure, for Kevin Thilwell to find the proper DP. He knows that it needs to come in, but you can't just go out and buy somebody. You buy the right person, like the 6 people we've mentioned here, you will find success. And that's no question. I should have looked at Giovinco and Pozuelo too. That would have been good. But if you buy the right player, you will find success just through that one player. However, you can also use that money on more TAM deal players and create a system and a team, which is what Red Bull are looking to do. They've done it very poorly, but it's something that you can look to do. And that is my thoughts. I don't believe MLS is a league where one man changes the game unless he is a super, super talent. Like I said, I think you bring Messi or Ronaldo in here. This is obviously that conversation we're having. You bring in somebody like, I'll say somebody like Albert Rusnak, Man City player, high level, really, really decent, has gotten RSL to the playoffs, but hasn't really won anything. And he's been okay, he's been a good player. He hasn't been off the walls amazing. It all depends on the right player. And again, the reason we're talking about this is because there are lots of teams out there that I'm sure are screaming, and my team included, are screaming for that DP, screaming for that big name signing, screaming to make signings like LAFC or Miami, or make these big crazy signings, when realistically you can't just rush into things like this. Because as we mentioned, David Villa is just the one example. Yes, they play on a small field and the system is wild and whatever, but if you put the right team around players, their impact is still felt, but not on a as large of a scale. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So I'm looking at the list of players we have up, and I'm trying to think. I think other than Zlatan on this list, I'm probably Wondolowski. So the 4 I'm looking at are Josef, Carlos Vela, Nico Ladero, and Piatti. I think those 4 were brought in with a plan in mind. And I know I harp back to it, but to me, it's the most impressive thing I've seen. Let alone from a franchise team, just a team in general. LAFC knew which players they wanted because they knew how they were going to play. So yes, Carlos Vela was probably the top, name on their list, and I'm sure names 2 through 5 probably would have done well. I'm not saying they would have put up the stupid numbers that Carlos Vela has, but there was a system in place around these players. So you can kind of understand why they fit in as well as they did. I think Ladero's kind of the little asterisk because he came in and was player of the year. Or am I thinking of Valeri, his first year?
No, you're thinking of Ladero, who came in halfway through the year.
Okay, and was player of the season.
Took them from a bottom of the West to winning MLS Cup.
Got it. Okay. So he's the exception, but I mean, David Villa was literally the first time, like NYC's first ever player. So they obviously knew who they wanted to bring in. So they signed David Villa and said, who are the 10 guys we can put behind him to get the most out of him? Right.
Yeah.
Like they clearly, at least I hope that was the plan that they had in place. And it works. I mean, granted, they take David Villa out of that team, and New York City was one of the only teams that you mentioned that when he wasn't playing still was okay. Versus you take out Zlatan, and that LA Galaxy team is a dumpster fire. Like, I can't think of how many times Latan basically just said, I'm winning us this game. Like, you guys can help me or don't help me. I'm still winning this game for us. So, yeah, I mean, you see Atlanta and how they look without Yosef. I mean, granted, everyone else is gone now, but you saw the way that they tried to fit Adam Yana in. They tried to put Barco up top instead of him. They tried to fit I can't think of his name. Jurgen Damm.
No, not Jurgen Damm.
The other guy.
Castro.
No, I'm thinking of Castro. Okay.
Castro.
Yeah. And while those players are good, like that, they're not Yosef. So I think you're right. It takes a perfect, quote, perfect player in that system. But I think a lot of these teams have an idea in place. Like the 6 names we have up here. Well, other than Wando, I'm going to take him out just because was born here.
Right.
So the other 5 were brought in from abroad to be basically the star of their attack. Like they were brought in with the sole purpose of, you are going to be our number 9 like caliber player. You're going to be the big name. You're going to want A, to sell jerseys, B, to put the ball in the back of the net. In Ladero's case, run our midfield and be, the conductor of how we play. And that has worked. You look at the Chicago bringing, excuse me, the Bastian Schweinsteigers of the league, where it's like, you will be the big name, you will help us fill seats and sell jerseys, but we're going to play you at center back. Like, like it wasn't really like, yeah, cool, you guys got a huge name. Like, I mean, arguably one of the biggest names ever to play in the league, but I don't think that was necessarily a signing to improve Chicago.
Yeah. I'm just looking here, right? Because Red Bull probably aren't going to go spend much money to get somebody on a transfer fee.
Right.
So I'm looking at this thing, the contracts that end at the end of next season, at the end of 21. You've got, and you're looking at players who are trying to fit the system, right? Young, have a lot of potential to grow. And there are lots of players on here that you look at and are like, this might actually work. Players who, Borja Mayoral, 23 years old from Real Madrid, right? Milik from Napoli, 26 years old, right? Like, these aren't players you're going to get, obviously. But there are some Ajax U18 players that they're looking at. Sandro Ramirez from Everton. These players that good, I'm sure. I don't see a lot of them, but who are, and again, I use Red Bull as my example, but who are they going to go out and get?
So, not to make this entirely about Red Bull, but genuine curiosity. So, let's say Red Bull, and you might not know the answer to this. Let's say Red Bull come to you and say, Andrew, we're gonna, as a Red Bull fan, we're telling you this right now. Our plan is to go out and spend however much money they have in the budget on a DP. Do you know what position you need most right now? Like, genuinely.
It's got to be a striker.
Okay. Because, you could argue that they've brought in, like, with the guys they brought in, like, do they need help elsewhere?
No. Adam, we haven't had a shot on goal in 3 of our last 4 games.
And that's also the striker's fault, but, like, at what point do you also then question further back? Because you're obviously not getting the ball higher up. So then do you look at someone like Ladero, who can play in just behind the striker and spray balls? I mean, I know that's not the way the system they play, but
the system is messed up. I agree. And that's the first thing that needs to change. But the reason why we were so good in other systems was because BWP was always in the right position, right? And that's what we need. We need some experience here. You can't just keep buying 21-year-olds and say, okay, learn through it. You'll be fine. It's not going to work that way. Not a Red Bull episode. We're going to try and stay away. But
I was just curious.
So your final point on this before we move on. Is MLS truly a one-man league? Can somebody just step in and change the game? Is it something where there is a team like Colorado who is let's not say Colorado. Let's say there's a team like DC United who is one big name striker away from being MLS Cup contender next year?
I would argue that Wayne Rooney was that player.
Okay.
I mean, you look at the impact he came in, single-handedly winning games. I think of that game against Orlando where he's making a 50-yard run to track back, wins the ball, and plays that long ball to Lucho to win it. I would say yes, it is, because you look at the immediate impact over the season that someone like Zlatan had on that Galaxy team. Like I've said this, I don't know how many times on the podcast before, but without a Zlatan in that team, the Galaxy might finish last in the West that year.
Interesting.
So I think, and Zlatan is the kind of exception to the rule because he's 36, 37 and is just like in better shape than I will probably ever be now at 27. So I think he's kind of the exception. But yeah, I think if the signing gets it right and you bring in someone that will fit the system and gels in, I think that will be the different. Like that can be the difference maker between you missing playoffs and potentially winning MLS Cup.
Interesting. Well, there you have it, folks. That is the end all be all. Let us know what you think. Tell me specifically. Shoot me a tweet or comment here and tell us what you think. I want to know what you guys think about this topic. Is this a league where any team can buy one single player and automatically become MLS Cup contenders? I personally don't believe so. I think it needs to be the right fit into a right system. You've heard Adam's take. What is yours?